Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Turn Up. Thank you all for listening. I think this is going to be our best episode yet. CK and I were talking. We are so excited. There's so much going on in the foreign affairs land between Ukraine, Russia. We are so excited. So I'll start off by saying we had over 150 listeners last episode. That is amazing. Thank you all for listening. We appreciate it so much. And CK, say a quick hi.
Yeah, hello. It's been long overdue to talk U.S. foreign policy. I think Ukraine, Russia is just the tip of the iceberg when we talk about, especially everything that's going on in Europe.
Yeah, there is so much going on. We talked about it. We could probably do 2 hours straight talking about this, but we're going to focus primarily on Russia, Ukraine. So let's get right into it. So, CK, I want to provide a brief history of Ukraine and Russia to give some historical relations to what's going on because there's so much between what Trump's saying. Um, and before we even get into Trump's comments over the last 24, 48 hours, I'll pass to you, but let me just get a brief history. So both Russia and Ukraine trace their origins to Kyiv, which, as we know, is the capital of Ukraine right now. And through Ukraine's lifespan as a country, it has been under control through various empires, including the Russian Empire, including the Soviet Union, when it became a part of the Soviet Union in 1922. And it remained so until 1991 when the Soviet Union, fell apart. Ukraine declared independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, and the early years of independence saw Ukraine balancing its foreign policy between Russia and the West. So it's kind of finding itself in this whole new post Soviet world. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine inherited a significant nuclear arsenal. In 1994, Ukraine agreed to give up its nuclear weapons in exchange for security assurances from the Russians, the United States, and the United Kingdom. This agreement, known as the Budapest Memorandum, included commitments to respect Ukraine's independence and sovereignty within its existing borders. Those that signed agree to refrain from the threat of use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of Ukraine, except in self-defense or in accordance with the United Nations Charter. So essentially, Ukraine gave up its nukes, therefore Russia can't invade, and the US and UK are supposed to help out Ukraine if something happens. Okay, so that's Ukraine. And now we have to understand Russia. I did a bit of studying of Russian history while I was in college, and I've read a bunch of books afterwards, just always been fascinated by Russia. And say what you want about the Russians, but they want to expand. That's their entire MO. That's their entire personality trait is we want more land. And Putin wants more than anything else. He wants two things: to restore the glory of the Soviet Union and to conquer more land. And the two essentially go hand in hand. So what does Putin do? He doubles down in the second Chechen war. He invades Georgia and he annexes Crimea, and now he's invaded Ukraine. So he's done a lot of things in order to make Russia a great country, in order to expand its territorial gains. And now I'm sure you and everyone else is defending his actions in Ukraine will scream, "Hey, NATO expansion! Ukraine or Russia did this because they had no choice because NATO was expanding on its borders." Well, I think we can both agree it's a little more complicated than that, and I'm really excited to get into it. So I am probably more anti-Russian than most. I'm going to try and stay as non-biased as possible, but I'm pretty anti-Russian. And I've already given a long enough intro. CK, I do want to get over the strategic mindset because I think how we look at it from a strategic view really kind of reflects the actions that we're taking and everyone else is taking. But I think my intro is long enough, so I'll turn it over to you to hit whatever you want before we jump into this fun little debate.
Yeah, I think we're forgetting a couple things with the history. One big one would be the Revolution of Dignity in 2014. So, pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych was overthrown in what Russia and the Russian allied Ukraine's would call a coup. And they would also say that the United States backed that coup, paid millions and millions of dollars for protesters and to start this uprising.
The United States
And
getting
so,
involved in elections? What?
yeah, there is such a thing as a National Endowment for Democracy. Look it up. They work with the CIA, they work with the State Department, they overthrow a lot of governments. So Russia would point to that and say, U.S. funded this coup to overthrow a pro-Russian president in Ukraine. Then pro-Russians uh, revolt after that revolution, after that president is overthrown, after Yanukovych is overthrown. And they say, we want to separate from Ukraine. Most of the pro-Russians are living in Crimea. Russia obviously says, we accept those terms. We will take Crimea. And so honestly, what happened in, this invasion is just that revolt never actually ended. There was just kind of a slowdown, a ceasefire, but it was just an extension of that. And so you can say, you can look at, say Russia was bad for invading. I agree with that. But there's always a but, there's always nuance, right? Did Russia do it unprovoked? I would say absolutely not. If you're playing a game of chess,
Hot take.
right? If I can make a lot of moves to attack your king without taking any pieces. I'm not attacking, like taking someone's pawn is,
No,
is a
I get what you're saying.
provocation.
Yeah, essentially, if China, created ties, their own new pact with Mexico, and now Mexico became close allies with China, we might do something about it because it's right on our border. So I understand that argument, but I think we need to look at it from a very strategic standpoint and says, why? Is it just because Ukraine was now pro-West and that it was flirting with the idea of NATO, right? I remember very clearly, like Putin's like, hey, I need Ukraine, I need you to say you're not going to join NATO. I need you to guarantee that you will not join NATO. NATO didn't do, or Ukraine didn't do that, right? The United States, backed up saying, hey, Ukraine can do whatever they want. They're a sovereign nation. Europe said the same thing. And Russia's like, whoa, I can't take that risk. So I get that. But here's the thing.
That's certain.
No, you
Go
go.
ahead.
You can go. No, you can go.
Yeah, no, that is certainly part of it. And I know you said, NATO expansion happened after, but NATO expansion has been happening for the last 25 years, right? Boris Yeltsin begged Clinton not to expand NATO, said that's a provocation. A lot of Clinton advisors said the exact same thing. And guess what? And you could say, well, Finland didn't happen, Sweden didn't happen. 1999, Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland. Those are Soviet bloc countries, right? Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, more Soviet bloc companies. Albania, Croatia. So like every 5 years, we just added more, creeping closer. And
which
NATO
if you're the United States, which you're a part of NATO, this is what you want. You want to take inch by inch by inch to weaken what you view Russia as an enemy, right? Now, why are we enemies with Russia? Communism isn't really a thing anymore, like in that sense that it was during the Cold War. So, like, Russia doesn't really need to honestly be our enemy, but they are. So we're doing steps to weaken our enemy.
But again, do we create the enemy and say now we have to take steps to weaken our enemy? Because in 1994, could we have created, an ally like we created Japan after World War II? Or did we push just like after World War I, when Europe pushed Germany into the mud just to make them bitter, just to give rise to Hitler? Is that honestly what's happening?
That's a good point.
And NATO was formed, right, to combat the USSR. That's the reason it was formed, correct?
Sure.
So the Cold War ends, and they say, let's put down our guns. And instead of putting down our guns, we're still pointing them at them. And not only are we're adding guns. So they say, wait, I thought the war was over. I thought, we're good now.
Yeah, but it's hard just to point to, hey, the Soviet Union collapsed, everything's good. I mean, you still got to hold Russia accountable or Soviet Union accountable for what they did for the last 50 years. All the countries they invaded, all the countries that they backed, Afghanistan, invading Chechnya, like they still did things that were not good. Their former leadership.
So we're going to hold Boris Yeltsin. So if we hold Boris Yeltsin, accountable for the sins of Lenin and Stalin, right?
Well, the sins of Stalin are on a league of its own. The amount of people he killed of his own, he's not even comparable. How horrible of a human being he is.
Who are we holding accountable? And does that give rise to Putin?
So, as we all know, Putin pretty much grew up as what, a colonel in the KGB when the Soviet
Yeah.
Union was collapsing. He was like on the front line between the East and West, and so he was affected by this more than anything. But I studied a lot of Russian history, and so I really think at this stage in Putin's life, he wants to be remembered. He wants to go down as a great Russian leader. And pretty much the only way to do that in Russia is you got to make sure you're powerful, people respect you, and then you have to take land. And so I just think it's in Russia's DNA, in their blood, to take land. And now you can say, hey, NATO's scooting up. And at any point, we can become allies with Russia, just like we became allies with Great Britain after we revolted against them, right? Like at one point, we literally fought a war for our independence against Britain, and we're friends with them. And so when you look at what Russia did to invade Ukraine, I almost find it just almost laughable, because NATO is now more powerful than it's been before Trump, anyways, more powerful by Sweden and Finland becoming countries, NATO countries. And now Russia's like, oh, we tried to stop NATO expansion and we literally made it worse. Finland at no point was ever going to become a NATO country, and now they are.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's two sides pointing fingers and saying they started it. But I would just say, right, to take the nuanced approach of we have a role to play in this. And you can say the history of Russia is to take land, so Putin wants to take land. The history of America is also imperialism, right? I mean, we're still imperialistic. Look at where we have in Hawaii and Guam. We have a military base
And we're
in
about
every
to add our
strategic
51st
place.
state.
Yeah, our new president has talked about annexing a lot of land. So you can say that's in the nature of Russia, but the U.S., we're not saints, and we love to paint good guy versus bad guy. There's no good guys in this. It's self-interest for self-interest. But
Isn't
I
that
would also
ever
argue,
for isn't good just in the high, like in the eye of who's ever making the action, that when you objectively look at things, unless it's Hitler killing Jews, that it's pretty much just some middle ground, and it's whatever side you're on is the side that makes sense and supports. Like very rarely, I think, throughout human history, there's one side that is like objectively horrible and evil. But you're right. If
yep,
I'm Russia, I understand why they're doing what they're doing. But I think what Trump said and saying that Ukraine started the war, there's no way you can convince me that Ukraine started the war, because literally Russia built up its forces for months on the border and literally did the invasion. Now you can say that they had a reason to invade before they became a NATO country, but there wasn't a set vote, there wasn't a set timetable. There was tons of negotiations going on. Freaking the French president flew over there and said, "Hey Vlad, don't invade Ukraine. Please don't do this. We don't want to get involved." But Russia still did this. And the reason why they did it is because they thought they could win Ukraine very quickly. Got to remember, the Ukrainian population, the major language, or the language spoken by the middle and upper class, they spoke Russian. They didn't speak Ukrainian. You only spoke Ukrainian if you were in the poor, lower education, right? They thought that they would just drive in there and they would celebrate them, that they'd be like, thank you for coming over and helping us regain our country. And we're more than happy to join Russia. And so when they did show up, it wasn't what they expected, which is why the Russian invasion of Ukraine objectively is the biggest failed invasion of any country in the last, I don't know, 50 years that I can think of, maybe longer, maybe since the Bay of Pigs. I don't know, man. It was such an abject failure of an invasion. They tried to take Kiev. Within the first 48 hours, the special forces got eliminated. They had 40 miles of tanks and armored vehicles just breaking down on the road because their supply lines were atrocious. And so they thought they could take Ukraine. They failed. And now they're stuck in a 3-year war, and they have no way to get out unless President Trump makes some peace deal.
you would say they have no way to get out. But I mean, the only reason Ukraine's in this war is because of hundreds of billions of dollars of
Correct.
weapons
Yeah,
and equipment.
let's start exploring that side. I think that's a super fair point and really opens up to NATO as a whole.
Yeah, so maybe Russia has no exit strategy if he's fighting Ukraine backed by all of the Western world. That's
correct.
True.
Yes. Yep.
But Ukraine has no exit strategy. They have no way to win unless the money keeps coming in.
Correct. Because one thing I do want to note, because I think I know what direction you're going with, I want to acknowledge that I think at any point in time Russia could defeat Ukraine. And I mean that.
Without the backing of the West.
No, even with the backing of the West. If Russia said, hey, I want to go in and actually start leveling cities, they have the capabilities. I think even without using nukes, I want to take nukes off the board because that changes literally everything. But they
No,
have enough.
but with the backing of the West, if Russia did that, they would surely start. It would start happening to them. I think.
Maybe, but what I guess the point I'm trying to make is that Russia is still holding back. They can do more. They can create more destruction, more harm. Now, what's the point if you were to completely level Kiev? Like, what's the point then? Like you just took out the city that you claim to be the capital of the original Russia. Like, there's no point in doing that. It would defeat everything, and the whole world would truly hate you. So, like, but I'm just saying they have the means to do more, and they are playing a little restrictive on offense.
Yes, I think they're also hoping for an exit strategy, especially now with Trump.
Yeah. So what do you think that exit strategy is?
They have to go to the negotiation. I think the U.S. is the linchpin, right? They're the deciders. If the funding stream stops, Russia rolls Ukraine, and if their funding stream goes for the next 15 years, Russia gets rolled slowly and painfully. And I think Russia is at least acknowledging that by going to the table. Zelensky, I think, is having. I think he has a little too much pride in this war, and um, is is saying, I'm not going to negotiate. Which
Which I
I don't
get
think
it.
he's.
No, but I get it. If the West is saying don't negotiate and they're willing to give weapons and everything, why would he?
But the
He
West
is
isn't saying that anymore. At least the United States isn't.
very recently, though, very recently, for the last 2.5, 3 years, he's been getting all the support he wanted. It's only recently that that's changing. But when you look at an exit strategy, let's say Russia they didn't get to capture Kiev and they want to back out. Well, they're kind of stuck. Like Russia cannot back out of this war without getting something substantial. They've lost too many men. They've lost too much money. All the Western businesses left Russia. Like from a straight pride standpoint, they need some type of W to justify, or I'm not saying there will be revolutions in Russia, but hey, historically that's a thing, like they need some type of win to get out. And if Russia wins in some way, that means Ukraine loses in some way. I just
Correct,
don't
and
see
that's
Russia leaving without a W. Whatever it is, it's got to be something.
yeah. I think that's right. What the W is it Crimea? Is it
Oh,
Ukraine
Crimea,
never joins?
absolutely. They already have Crimea. That's not it. It's how far
No,
inland do they push into
no,
Ukraine?
I disagree because if they
Really?
said, yeah, if the U.S. said right now war is over, Crimea is part of the Russian, they would back out. They would say, great, that's what we came here for. Another
Well, and the
another poss
Donbas, right? It has to be the Donbas in that other region too, right? Because that's pretty much how they were already separatist uh, in that territory, anyways.
yeah, possibly, but that's where the negotiating comes in. Another possibility is in writing, Ukraine cannot join NATO. Um,
Yeah,
that
that's
would be
fair. That's fair.
maybe the easiest way to appease Russia. Will they say yes to that? It depends on how good Trump is as a negotiator. But yeah, you're right. He's not going to leave with nothing. What what something looks like is we'll see.
So what do you think now? I want to focus on two topics next. I want to talk about NATO and essentially like Europe not holding up to their end of the bargain from a military standpoint, from a funding standpoint, from the United States putting more money into Ukraine than any other European country, and we're like I don't know 3,000 miles away, like the furthest away from any European country. And then I want to talk about Trump's comments and kind of what the big media is saying is essentially that hey, Republicans are pissed. Democrats are pissed at Trump for the comments that he made that Zelensky's a dictator. I mean, is Zelensky really that much different than Winston Churchill when he pushed off elections during a time of war? Like that's kind of a thing. It's not unprecedented. It's pretty. I don't want to say it's normal, but historically, it's a thing. And is Trump a puppet of Russia, or how should Trump be viewed here unbiasedly? Because he is catching so much smoke from the left right now. It's really, really tough. So I know I just gave you both. I'll let you choose which one you want to tackle first.
Yeah, I mean Trump obviously speaks in exaggerations, but I was having this conversation with my friend the other day. I would say Zelensky is doing things that are more like dictators do. I mean, obviously, Putin is also a dictator, but Putin does,
I was about to say you
Putin
can't call
doesn't,
Zelensky a dictator, not Putin.
yeah, but Putin doesn't owe Trump anything. Zelensky owes Trump everything. He answers to Trump. And
That's
so
fair. That's a fair point. Honestly, if you're giving this dude hundreds of billions of dollars worth of weapons, like what are we getting in return, right? Are we doing this just to have a weakened Russia, or are we trying to get the minerals or something else out of it? There has to be
yeah,
something in it if you're willing to give up so much
if
resources.
you had a bar with your buddy, right, and your buddy's getting belligerent and about to fight another guy who's belligerent, you wouldn't tell the other guy, "Hey, you're being dumb." You tell your buddy, "Hey, you're being dumb. Let's get out of here." Right? Like
Yeah.
you don't look at the other guy. He might even if he started it. You pull your buddy out of the bar and say, "Back up. You need to calm down."
Yeah,
And that's
no, on
Russia doesn't answer to him, so why would he expect an answer?
No, that's fair. And to that point, right? So I know JD Vance, I know Marco Rubio, and I think a few other leaders, I'm blanking on their names, basically said, "Hey, Ukraine, hey Zelensky, like, do not insult Trump. Like, you owe him." And to your points, like, they exist as a country because of Western support. That Western support is led by the United States tenfold in almost every single possible category,
Tenfold. Yep.
right? So at some point you have to be like, you exist because we allow you to exist. Now we're doing this because at this current moment it is in our best interest to have a weakened Russia. Yes, it's almost like a proxy war in order to, kill Russian soldiers through Ukrainians, use your resources, make it so you have to make weird alliances with North Koreans so their soldiers are fighting, and it's like, oh, you're desperate then. But at the end of the day, you exist because we're training your soldiers. We've given you the opportunity to exist. We don't own your country, yeah, sure, but at the same time, we kind of own your country right now because we're giving you everything. If we pull back, you're screwed.
Yep. No, exactly. But the other thing is, I think Russia Ukraine is just a consequence of a larger, weakening ties from the U.S. and Europe. Right? It's not a secret that Macron, Keir Starmer, Olaf Scholz of Germany, they don't like Trump. Right? They
Yes.
actively campaign said he was a threat. I'm pretty sure the UK intelligence agencies actively were spreading information to try to for Trump to lose. Trump knows all this. He's cutting ties, and part of that is cutting ties with NATO, which is part of that is cutting ties with this Ukraine-Russian war. So I would say he's mad at Zelensky, but he's mostly mad at Western Europe, and he's just taking it out on this war. Where could I hurt him the most? Right here, and NATO's biggest pet project of the moment.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So I do want to throw a disclaimer. I am a huge European fan. I've been there a few times. I love Europe. I think it's amazing. And I believe a strong alliance with European nations is incredibly important for economic reasons, for security reasons, for a million different reasons. And also, it's just an amazing place to visit. But I will concede to the notion that Europe as a whole does not like the United States, or at least Trump, and because they're way more left, and that they are not holding up their end of the deal when it comes to NATO funding, security, and other aspects, and that they really rely on the United States. Now, I do think this is a double-edged sword where it favors the United States, right? What I think the United States' biggest commodity is our military. It allows us to do essentially whatever we want, right? And a weaker European military allows the United States to be stronger because we can pick up the slack. And then, of course, our economy is bigger than the EU. I think it is. Oh gosh, I hope I don't sound dumb right now. Is the United States economy bigger than the EU's?
I think so. I
Okay, all right,
don't quote
all
me.
right. Someone fact check me. Just someone fact check that. And so we have a lot more sway. But at the end of the day, it seems that for the most part, the United States is being the better partner of the two. To your point, hey, our European allies don't like us right now, or don't like our politicians, and they're not helping financially, and we are fighting a war for them that is on their border. So they do owe some responsibility to commit more and do more. CK, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure a report came out 2 weeks ago that said Germany's is facing significant military challenges where it's literally couldn't even deploy its military. They don't even have a readiness of 50%, meaning that if Germany had to go to full scale war, they could only utilize 40% of their entire military because they're so undertrained and underfunded. Like, let that sink in.
I
That's
saw something
crazy.
along those lines. Yeah, obviously everyone's leaning on the United States, and I said this a couple podcasts ago. Like we have, that's why we have the chips. That's why like these tariffs aren't going to do much in terms of driving people away. Like until they bolster up their military to defend themselves, they kind of need us with or without Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, and then honestly, with Trump, good with the good comes the bad, and it's so tough, man. And I honestly don't even know which way to go with it. Like, if you're a Trump supporter, you defend everything he says, where it's like, oh, he didn't really mean that. Oh, he was exaggerating. Oh, he's just using that as a negotiating table. And if you hate Trump, you're just like, he just said Zelensky was a dictator and that Russia's the good guy. Like, what the heck? We saw Russia invade, right? So it's just like, he could not be the most polarizing person in the entire world, and the media just feeds off of it because it just crushes ratings, which does not help at all. Um, but
Yeah, we're 25 minutes into this podcast. We haven't even mentioned that like over half of the money we've sent to Ukraine hasn't gone to Ukraine. Ukraine has admitted to it.
where's it gone?
I don't know. That's the question. Probably mostly our military industrial complex of Lockheed, Boeing, and the people who are supposed to send them weapons. Probably a lot of oligarchs in Ukraine or wherever else. There's probably some money laundering going on. Ukraine, in the last decade, has been neck and neck with Russia in terms of corruption. So I would imagine that a lot of it is just getting funneled like USAID to places it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point. It's probably going everywhere. It's probably going to our big defense contractors. There's probably fat in their pockets a little too, and I'm sure Ukraine and other people along that pipeline is trying to take up as much money as they can. I don't know, man. I just find it also wild. I mean, I really do blame Russia. I think they completely misplayed their hand, and now they're trapped in a war that they literally cannot win as long as there's Western support, and they're trying to find somewhat of a win, or there'll be some type of maybe revolution. And Ukraine's caught in a tough spot where it has to appease the West because they only exist because we allow them to exist, and therefore they're going to have to do some concessions in order to pay back the debt that they now owe the Western countries. Like they have to. You're not giving some country $500 billion and they're not going to pay it back. Like this whole mineral thing, there shouldn't be any outrage over it. They owe us so much money for what we gave to them that it's almost just to pay it back. I mean, there's war debt for a reason. But before we transition, honestly, to our last part, anything else you want to close up here?
No, I think we could go on for hours, and I don't think anyone would be convinced
Yeah,
otherwise.
honestly, if you hate Trump, then you're probably hating everything he's saying. And if you love Trump, you're probably being like, yeah, he's probably right for the most part. But
I,
please
I,
just
I
know
will
that
say,
Russia did
I,
invade.
I will say the hardest part about this is the propaganda machines on both sides, right?
Oh,
You're
dude,
dealing
yeah.
with two of the three biggest propaganda machines in the world, like Russia, the United States. The third one would be Israel. I think, but like the news is not reporting facts on both sides, right?
Totally
Like
agree. Absolutely.
it's just propaganda and propaganda and propaganda and of like what's happening. It's so hard to tell if someone's being, instigating, someone's crossing a line because both sides are just lying.
Dude, it's honestly horrible. So I obviously use mainstream media to like get like the headlines, figure out what's going on. And there's some YouTubers I listen to as well. One of them I liked for a while, but this dude just hates Trump, and any opportunity he can, he tries to come off as like non-biased, and it's just absolute slander. I'm like, bro, like anyone can see right through it. But we have some viewers right now be like, you're not unbiased, you're a liar. And I'm like, oh shit, man, that sucks. But all right, CK, I'll let you introduce the last topic before we wrap it up. Anything you want, free for all, go.
Anything I want.
Anything. The world is yours. Go USA, beat Canada.
Go USA beat Canada 2-1. No, cash cash only with a K was trending on X for like a week. They've been stalling. Cash Patel was confirmed today. 51-49.
So what does that
Murkowski and
mean?
Collins said no, and Mitch McConnell said yes, first time.
Wow. I saw Mitch McConnell's not going to run for re-election in 2026, and I think the entire world rejoiced. That dude is a dinosaur that needs to go for a million different reasons.
So that means all of the contentious picks are now a yes, right? You have the big ones are Hegseth, RFK, Tulsi, and Cash. All of them, yeah. So Trump got what he wanted, and I think it's the funny thing that only like the left and the right agree on is that Trump is doing exactly what he said he would do,
He might be the only
and like,
politician ever to do that.
but the left, they're like, I told you, he's doing exactly what he said he would do. Like now watch the world burn. And the right's like, can you believe it? He's doing exactly what he said he would do. This is awesome. It's so funny to watch. It's the only thing people agree on.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny because I'll hop on like the comment section on Instagram X or whatever, and it's just so funny. Someone's like, "You voted for this? You want 4 years of this? You want 3 years and 11 months?" And someone's like, "Yes, no, this is exactly what I want, dude." I know we say this like every time, but like I don't know if politics are more divided than they are now. Maybe when he was first president, they were because that was such a shock. But I feel like this is a really, really close second.
You want more divided politics? You can go to the UK or Germany right now. I think we need
Yeah.
an episode on that coming soon. We're probably out of time for this one.
No, we are. No, all right. Any last final comments before we wrap it up?
No, I got a hockey game to watch.
All right, yeah, we got to go back to the hockey game. So we are recording in the middle of the USA versus Canada hockey game. So if you're listening to this, you already know the score. Canada, we allow you to be a country, and so you have to let us win this game because if we lose this game, we might actually invade from a sake of pride. All right, I'm kidding. Canada, don't hate me. That was a complete joke. But we are up 2-1 as of this episode. All right, turn ups. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We really appreciate it. We really do think this is our best. We've had some episodes over 100 or a bunch over 100, a few over 300. Honestly, it means the world to us when you listen to know that the little free time that we have, there's people that actually give a crap about our take at unbiased news. So please hit the subscribe button, leave a comment if you want to hear us talk about anything. I've had a ton of my liberal friends reach out lately, and I've had some great conversations, and I promise I'll bring some of these up in the next episode. But with everything going on from a foreign affairs standpoint, we just had to talk about this. But anyways, I think this was our best episode yet. I hope you all, wherever you are, have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.